Welcome to Cosmic Comics, Games and Collectibles, your zen of geekism. We carry comics old and new, magazines, toys, games like Pokemon, Magic, D&D. Want Godzilla, Ultraman, Star Trek, Ninja Turtles, Funko Pops? You'll find it all here. Shop our Cosmic Sound Room and pick up a record or two. Enjoy our Comic Coffee Lounge with a cup of Sasquatch coffee or a delicious menu item while geeking out over a super cool movie on our big screen. Come by and say hello to Maui. Cosmic Comic, Games and Collectibles. Superman loves us, and so will you.
But what if you couldn't find your Spider-Man at Marvel Comics? That is the question that has been raised this week because we have seen, hey, it's copyright news, it's lawsuit news, and Ditko and Don Heck and Gene Colan, they're all saying, yeah, it's time we're going to just release those copyrights that Marvel has, and Marvel has sued them back because that's what you do. It's the LCS Guys show, and we have with us tonight Mr. LCS himself, Michael Tierney from Little Rock. Michael, how are you doing today?
Doing great. How are you doing today?
Yeah, you know what? I'm doing fantastic. I had a whole box of things to ship today, and it was apparently perfect timing because I got in a box of. I'll show them here on the stream. I got in all the issues of Life on Korra from Mike Jimmy Lorsha de Bruin in the Netherlands.
Easy
he
for
was
you to
using
say.
our service. Yeah, no, you should hear some of the other stuff he says. But he shipped these in from the Netherlands for Critical Blast Logistics to redistribute inside the U.S. And it was interesting because I put a little note in the mailbox that, hey, come up to the porch and pick stuff up. And I watched for our mail carrier, and she arrived. And she had, I helped her load them into the back of her truck. And apparently, the post office does audits of routes. And I did not know they did this. And she said this was perfect time for her because they were doing these audits where they count your parcels that you bring in. And if you're not bringing in very many, maybe they don't need you. And they can take one guy who's also got a low route and consolidate because he can do the one. But on the other hand, if you come in with lots of parcels and you show you've got a lot of work to do, you could be in for a raise. So this was good timing for her, and she was very happy to have as many parcels as she could fit in her truck. So
that must be why my post lady is always so friendly and so happy.
Oh yeah, you're making her. She says, look how many parcels I brought in. You're keeping her at the top of the list. So when it comes time for bonuses and raises,
yeah, she takes really good care of me.
I go to Mr. Tierney's house every day. Once a week, I got all these boxes.
I have packages almost every day. So, and then around the end of the month, boy, I got a bunch for her. I try to break them out at least over a couple of days because she runs out of room in her truck.
Oh yeah, well, you're also doing the you got the crowdfunding to fulfill on those books. So,
well, not just that, but I'm my monthly mail orders. On top of that, I have my eBay store, so I'm just shipping stuff all the time.
Is that how the mail order works? You do it monthly instead of every week?
Well, I have some people who want it weekly. Some people want it bi-weekly. The majority of people want it monthly. And I've got a few people who do not get a lot of titles, but we wait till they build up, and then sometimes it's multi-months on them.
That makes sense. Yeah, just say, hey, ship it to me not on a schedule but on a poundage. When
Right.
I have 2 pounds worth of books, pop them in a box.
Hey, on that Spider-Man intro, before we start talking about all the legal stuff, have you
Yeah,
ever watched an old British comedy? I think it was an inspiration for Friends called Coupling.
that sounds familiar, but I don't think I've watched it. I think I might have heard of it, but not watched it.
You need to watch it if you ever get a chance. It's written and directed by and produced by Russell T Davies. He's the
I
guy
know
who
him.
did the Doctor Who after the first guy, or not Russell Stephen Moffat. Russell T Davies was the first guy on
Oh,
Doctor Who, and then Stephen Moffat came along, and he did a long run until the last guy came in. But yeah, Stephen Moffat had this show called Coupling, and in there you had a plot line where there's all these romantic tensions. People liking each other. One guy wants to date this one girl, but he ends up going out with her friend instead. They date for a long time, and the other girl's always got this fantasy, and she's talking about this encounter she had, and it turned out to be with him. And she was like Tchaikovsky was playing, and this and that. Well, as you get to the very end of the third season, you find out she was just drunk as a skunk, and the song that was really playing, Spider-Man, Spider-Man.
oh,
But her
geez.
memory was Tchaikovsky.
Yeah, she had beer headphones on. Um, yeah, speaking of Russell T Davies, he is coming back to Doctor
Yeah,
Who.
I think that's good
So
news for Doctor Who fans.
I
I've not
think
been
it
a
is
fan of the
too.
current show. The writing, I mean, sometimes it's like they had one episode where the outside air was poisonous, and this one character from a city got lost, so they were out there searching in a vehicle, and they were like driving an hour or so. All of a sudden, he's knocking on the outside. I'm like, how is he supposed to even be surviving? They had plot holes and things that like this make no sense. The stories just they weren't there. They had some good special effects. They had some pretty cool looking monsters, but the stories just they didn't connect.
Yeah, this was a Doctor Who that was also very anti-gun, and I get the doctor's always said he doesn't like weapons, but it was
Yeah,
like they brought it up every other episode with the Jodie Whittaker version,
yeah.
and I
Sometimes you
had
got
an
beat on the head.
yeah I had an opportunity to ask one of the comic writers about that. Said is there a directive on this? What's the storyline? Is there something that happened recently that we haven't seen in an episode yet? And out of the 10 questions I was able to submit, the BBC itself struck that question from the list and she wasn't allowed to answer it. So
Wow.
either there was something coming that was important in the plot line and it didn't want to even touch on it, or it was just like, yeah, we don't talk about that.
They just probably just they don't talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in the UK, you got to remember it's illegal to buy plastic knives.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can imagine
pretty
you're
soon
asking
they're going to
for
be
handguns.
pretty soon they're going to be collecting up, sticks. These were taken off the street today. Look, this was
Yeah,
an elm branch. It won't hurt
arrested a
anybody
kid because
anymore.
he had a rock in his pocket. Obviously it was a lethal. Yeah, you can't protect people from people. I mean, at some point you gotta. I mean, there's crazy people out there. Let's just deal with the crazy people.
This guy had
I'll tell you what. And this whole thing, a lot here in America, they really push this whole the anti-gun agenda, and we're all about safety, but it's like we had like 3 school shootings in 1 week, and I was watching on BBC America. I don't get my news from American news because they just grind their axes and they're just nothing but sparks. And so there, was one school shooting and where the school guard had his gun, shot the guy. Nobody was hurt. Another school shooting. I saw a video of this one where a guy walks up to a bunch of kids at a school bus, pulls out his gun. One of the mothers pulls out her gun, bang, he shoots him dead. No problem on that one. Nobody hurt but the bad guy in both cases. Then there was one where a guy went to a Texas school. There was nobody who was armed to be able to defend, and he shot a bunch of kids. That's the only one of the 3 that was reported here in the U.S. Now, on the flip side of that, now this is something I've always paid a lot of attention to on this thing, because I'm actually a survivor of one of the very first, actually the second gun shooting that actually happened in America. The first
really.
one was the guy in the tower shooting down there at I think it was College Station or Texas, somewhere in Texas. Shot
Yeah.
a whole bunch of people from the tower station. Well, the second one was a preacher's son from Tulsa, Oklahoma, got in his car and drove up to Wichita, Kansas, and climbed up on the top of Ramada and started shooting people. As I was driving past right in front, because I was living in Wichita at the time, I was on my way to work. I worked the second shift, so I was driving there. I don't know, whatever the evening shift was getting ready to begin. And as I was going down the main street, then cut over to where the printing plant was, and all of a sudden I was like, man, that is the worst backfiring car I have ever heard. Well, by the time I get on the parking lot, I'm walking in, everybody's rushing the door because they knew that's the way I was driving. They're like, oh my God, are you okay? I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, there's a shooting downtown. I said, well, I don't know about the shooting, but I've sure heard a lot of backfiring going on. And remember when Schwarzkopf was doing the thing about the luckiest man in Iraq when they first started attacking him, and they had the bomb sites on this one bridge, and a car drives across it right the second before the bomb blows up? Well, that was kind of me. I was like, I could really relate to that because I was driving right through the kill zone as he was opening fire on people. I just didn't happen to see anybody getting shot. And when I was driving home that night, they were reading off the list of all the people this guy shot. Now, he didn't kill a whole lot of people, but he just shot a whole lot. I mean, I got in my car, they were reading out the list. By the time I got home, they were still reading the list of the people who shot. He shot so many people. Now, he's still in jail today. I couldn't tell you his name because I don't want to know his name. I don't want to give him any kind of notoriety. But he's still rotting in jail. And, so I have paid attention to the shootings a lot. This guy had an argument with his girlfriend, got angry, just drove up there. So this was just kind of a copycat thing, kind of a mental crazy thing. But as they've gone on, I found one common denominator. One of the most obvious ones was the Batman shooting in the Colorado theater, where the guy went in and shot all the kids. And he had just quit taking his prescribed antidepressants. And if you go and you watch a lot of these, shootings, most of the time, these are guys who quit taking their antidepressants. So that's why we're seeing such an outburst of this. And the more I watch it, whenever I check into these things, there's always those antidepressants involved. So it's kind of like the whole thing with the opioid crisis, where they hit it for so long. It's a mental health issue, right? Now it's an opioid instead of opioid. It's more of an antidepressant mental health issue. And so everybody's like, oh, take all the guns away. It's like, okay, Chicago, they're really do a big drive to take people's guns away. Well, the adage of if you outlaw guns, only outlaws will have guns. Welcome to Chicago. And they have such bad crime because they know everybody's unarmed. They can do what they want. Then you go to other areas where they have open carry. Bam, there's no crime there at all. So it's the disarming the population, taking the guns away from the law-abiding citizens is not the answer. It's a mental health issue, and it's a crime issue. And so, and criminals, if they think you can fight back, they're probably going to leave you alone.
Yeah, well, you should put up a sign, Michael, that says you can't bring your gun here. They'll say, well, shoot, let's go rob someplace else. I can't go in there. Yeah. I was going to bring it. Think it works. I'm going to go shoot a bunch of people in the school area, but you're not allowed to bring a gun there, so I got to go somewhere else.
Killed the plans, yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy how some people think, oh, what you put up on a sign, that'll take care of it. Like, yeah, those people do not read signs. They don't care what you put up there. They're going to do what they want, and you can't legislate away the ability for people to defend themselves against the people who are going to do what they want.
We are triggering every single YouTube listener right now.
Well, yeah. But
every single YouTube AI that's listening to this broadcast is just like, red flag, red flag, red flag.
Yep. Take them off the air. If all of a sudden the screen just zaps, we'll know what happens there.
Yeah, we will.
They're not playing to the agenda.
Oh. Well, yeah. This has been an interesting lawsuit, though.
Oh, yeah. As you know, I know a little bit about those trademarks. Yeah.
Yeah, you do.
Unfortunately,
it's amazing how it doesn't have to be an exact name. It can be a little bit different and still be an infringement if it's a similar product and stuff like that. But this was a little bit different because this is the copyright, and for folks who don't know, copyright and trademark, two different things that are very easily confused together. But basically, it's I think Ditko and Colin and these other guys, their estates are pretty much saying, hey, it's 35 years now since we've done it. We have the legal right to, I don't know, it's cancel the copyright on it so that Marvel doesn't have it anymore.
I think it's trying to do, yeah.
Yeah, and and Marvel's going to come back and say, well, this was work for hire. Which is it is Disney's argument because now it's a Disney lawyer that's going to have to take care of this. In fact, his Marvel attorney Dan Petrocelli of O'Melveny and Myers said that since these works were made for hire and thus owned by Marvel, we filed these lawsuits to confirm that the termination notices are invalid and of no legal effect. So basically, all the creators filed a lawsuit saying we're terminating the copyright. And Marvel filed a lawsuit right back, says they're not your copyrights to terminate.
Yeah, I'd heard that Disney, not Disney, but Marvel had hired the same lawyer that represented Disney on the rights issue over the Winnie the Pooh, and it also was the same guy who'd represented DC over the rights of the Superman against the Superman heirs. Now the wild thing about it was when he was arguing the Winnie the Pooh argument, what it was is the heirs of the Winnie the Pooh estate. They had gotten into the dumpster. A private guy had gotten into the dumpster and found all these records showing all these sales that they were not being fairly compensated for the royalties. This lawyer got that thrown out of court, saying it was illegally obtained, even though it was still in the trash. It was still in the property of Disney. They did not have a right that was illegally obtained. Now that same lawyer argued the exact opposite case in the Disney, not Disney, but the DC case with Superman, because what happened with there was the Disney lawyer, or I keep trying to say Disney, the DC lawyer who was representing the heirs, he had a disgruntled employee who left angry and stole documents from the offices showing that how he had a deal where if they won, he was going to get part ownership of Superman. And the judge used that to throw out their case, saying, "Well, I don't even want to go into the details on that." But so this same guy argued that a stolen paper was legal, but stuff that was pulled out of the trash was not. Is that not just arguing both ends of the spectrum? And so that's what it comes down to. It's who has the most money and who has the most high-powered lawyer.
Yeah, the lawyer just tries to win the game. It's all a game. And they'll argue either side of it if they think that it'll help them win the case overall.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm involved in another lawsuit right now.
Can you? You can't talk about that.
No, I can talk about this one right now.
Okay.
They're trying to put a gag order on it, but they haven't yet, and hopefully they won't.
Let's talk while you're not gagged.
Exactly. And in my position as a city councilman for the city of Maumelle, we had a situation where we were widening a road. It needed to be done. We'd had the money. We'd been sitting on it. Previous administration never got it done. I came in with the new mayor, and bam, we were getting things taken care of. So they're progressing. The work was going. The road's torn up. And then Energy's like, we don't want to move those power poles. We want you to pay us first. Well, it was in their franchise agreement that they would pay to move the power poles. When they just recently did a new rate increase with the Public Service Commission, it was one of the reasons they said they needed the increase was to pay to move power poles in situations like this. And all of a sudden, they're like, no, we think you need to pay for those. You, the city, and your citizens need to pay for that. We're like, wait a minute, man, not just double tapping, almost like triple tapping. And
we like spending the extra money that we've been getting.
Yeah, and so they're just, they just kept stalling. They just stopped it. A couple of months go by. Finally, we issued a resolution on the city council going, get it done. We'll argue about the money later. We'll take it to the Public Service Commission and let them decide who owes. That still wasn't good enough for them. And so they're still ignored. Then they filed a lawsuit against us. So just to finally get the work going again, while we're counting our lawsuits, we put out a thing, where we'll put the money in, we'll make a line of credit. So the money's there if the Public Service Commission rules against us, get the job done. Because there was like one side of the road was 2 feet lower than the other side. I mean, that's just as hazardous as
that's a ravine.
Right. And of course, you know what they called it, don't you? A beautification process. Completely, they will never acknowledge the public hazard they were creating. And, now they're wanting to say, oh, well, we're going to, we need to put a gag order on you because, these are confidential information. And everything that they're saying that they don't want exposed and discussed in front of the public, it's all stuff that's available by the Freedom of Information Act. I mean, so we're like, what? That makes no sense. So, actually we are the first city and first city council ever to be sued by Energy. So they're wanting to use us as a test case to create a precedent so they can start putting chargebacks onto the cities. So they want to make an example out of us. So that's the way these lawyers think. And, that's what Marvel's doing with these guys. Like, okay, we don't want to keep on doing that. So let's crush these guys. And, they're going to be ruthless the way they go after them.
Well, DC has been doing that with the Siegel and Schuster estates over Superman for a while now. To the point that, they've got a new Superman. And guess what? He's not from Krypton. He's not Clark Kent. He doesn't have any of that copyright information attributed to him. So they don't have to pay anything for him. And he's gay on top of that. So obviously
And he
Superman and
doesn't
Lois Lane
sell.
was a thing. We won't have that.
Yeah.
And Superman is, I believe, this next Wednesday leaving. He's flying off to space and not to return, leaving John Kent in charge as the new Superman. So it's not so much that, hey, we want to chase a new audience, we want to have Superman for a new generation. It's we're tired of paying these people and we want to make all the money. So we need a new Superman, and this is what he's going to be. I can see them doing the same thing at Marvel with Spider-Man. In fact, people have been saying that if you look, you can already see the machinations in the wheels in motion for getting past that. With the
Miles
introduction,
Morales.
you got the introduction of Miles Morales as Spider-Man, absolutely. And what have they got coming up this year is the death of Doctor Strange in the comic books. I just kill him off, maybe he won't come back. It's going to be interesting. I mean, we used to watch this with Mickey Mouse. Every time the copyright got within 10 years of expiring on Mickey, Congress passed a law, said, that copyright law could be, another, 30 years longer or whatever. But now it's like within 5 years, and they've not done anything. So
they'd be ready to let it go and quit fighting. They can't extend it forever. Of course, with legal things like copyright and trademarks, it's not like people think, oh, well, that's the law, it's cut and dried. It's not like somebody steals your car, you show your pink slip to the police, hey, let's go arrest him, put him in jail for a felony. In legal things like trademarks and copyrights, you have to be your own cop. You have to hire the lawyers. You have to fight, and it's where the big guy wins almost all the time. But not every time. The little guy can squeak out a win here and there, but generally, the bigger, whoever has more money, and that's what the principles that they operate on, and will threaten you with too. You're like, hey, we got more money, you can't stop us. I've heard of that being said, and it's just it's in some ways it's kind of shameful. But just like, hey, if it's not nailed down, we're going to steal it. Even if it is nailed down, we're going to steal it. There's that kind of attitude.
Now, it's interesting because I see a lot of these crowdfunded comics come out, and I know that they're going to, they crowdfund first and then they try to get into stores. And I'm like, and I see titles that I'm like, can you use that title? Because I think someone else already uses it. Now, we've been dancing around the topic a little bit here, but you were involved in a lawsuit with Image Comics way back in the day that's been resolved. But, because they had a book called Wild Star and you had a book called Wild Stars. And it was a comic book, a similar name. You had it registered trademark. And, they tried to register trademark Wild Star and you said, hello, already got it. And
they did not succeed, yeah.
And now there is no Wild Star comic book. So, long story short, he's gone. I remember I came into your store. I said, hey, didn't you like win that thing? And you're like, yeah. I was like, well, here's his logo, guest starring appearance on this other thing. It's like, well, yeah, I can do that. Well, they got the R next to it. And they're like, oh, they're not supposed to do that. So
yeah, sometimes you have to fight your battles more than one time too. So yeah.
But I see things like somebody did a book called Sovereign, and I'm like, there is a book called Sovereign. I don't think you can do that. But at the same time, you can't copyright a title. So there's this. Again, that's the difference between the copyright and the trademark thing. You can write a book called Gone with the Wind if you want to, and it's a totally different story, and nothing can stop you. But trademark of the title is more for. I'm not even quite sure how the title trademark versus copyright works when it's the title of something.
Well, copyright generally refers to the actual work itself, the exact words or the exact images. Trademark is a name or a term. And, there's limits on what trademark will cover. It's like I could write a book where I have Spider-Man, a guy named Spider-Man, fight a guy named Superman. I just can't call the title of the book Superman versus Spider-Man. That would just get me sued out the wazoo. And there's just differences there, what the limitations are. But generally, if you have a term, it's like what happened with the recent thing with Conan the Barbarian. There was rights that had elapsed in Europe. And so a publisher by the name of Ablaze said, hey, we're going to make these comics over there in Europe. And they could. And they said, all right, let's take them to America, but we're going to call it Conan of Samaria and, or the Sumerian, and just, we'll be okay. And but no, they had trademarked the name Sumerian, and they were not okay. So they got the rights. They have worked it all out. And speaking of which, too, there's always a shifting floor sometimes on where everything's going around. It's like the Robert E. Howard properties were managed by the Otis Adelbert Hine agency for a long time. Then he turned it over to a guy by the name of Glenn Lord. Then around 1977, Glenn Lord turned it over to Conan Properties International Incorporated, and by I think Arthur Lieberman was running that. And then like in 2002, then it was taken over by a fellow by the name of Fred Malmberg with Cabinet Property. And then now Cabinet Properties has merged with Funcom, a video or an online gaming company, and formed another company where that will be the managing, but it's still going to be Fred Malmberg, so he's still in charge. So you got to keep track of who you're dealing with too. But with my the reason I know about all that is because I'm doing that Robert E. Howard art chronology, and I'll be unaffected by this change. I mean, it's no Fred we're dealing with, so we're in great shape.
Sure.
But you got to check out your rights, and a lot of people don't do the research. You can do trademark searches, you can do copyright searches. There are automated government websites you can go to do these searches, and a lot of people don't do that, but they need to.
Yeah, but as much of a shell game as that is, with the rights to Conan, it's like find the lady, folks, find the lady. As the cards get shuffled around, it gets really confusing when you start saying, "Hey, I own the rights to this thing, and I'm going to give you half of them." And now you own half the rights to something, and then you go off and do something, and you're like, you know what? I need someone to help me with this. I own half the rights to this property. I'm going to give you half the rights to this property. And that's what happened with Miracle Man, which
that was a crazy test.
Because nobody knew who owned it, or at least even who owned the majority of it. There's all these splinters of Miracle Man that were in everybody's pockets, and nobody was making anything off of it, and nobody could do anything with it.
Thunder Agents.
Yeah, what's the deal with Thunder Agents now? Because I
don't know if it's ever gotten resolved. There's always people we're going to bring them back, and nothing ever happens with them. That's there's a show game. You ever try to go back and research that one?
I'm gonna follow that one because I wasn't aware that it was as big of a problem. I've been like, why isn't there Thunder? I know DC did a Thunder Agents book a decade ago or so. It was short-lived, but
yeah.
And it wasn't in part of the DC universe. It was just like, they did some books and they didn't impact anything anywhere.
Well, another thing, too, when something gets taken off the shelf for a long time like that, people forget the audience is gone. What else they has moved on to other stuff. I mean, the property, it gets devalued. And people won't wait forever.
Yeah. Well, I was, I had just seen a poster I used to have in college that was done by Dave Stevens of Rainbow from D and Agents. And it was that almost like the Farrah Fawcett poster there with the kind of a pinup kind of pose to it. And I'm like, yeah, whatever happened to D and Agents? And I went out looking for the ownership on it because I'm like, that's one title that if it was up in the air, I wouldn't mind trying to do something with. Now Mark Evanier still owns it. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name right. I'm going to have him on the show sometime. He's just I've emailed him. He responded back very politely. He's just too busy right now. He's done too many podcasts. He says, I'm not saying no. I'm just saying not right now. So
gotcha.
So
that was
at some point would be fun to talk to.
I think it was being published by Eclipse.
It was an Eclipse comic. It was Mark Evanier and Will Munoz, I think. And the one thing I remember about it, because I was, a teenager when I was reading D and Agents, and I was also reading New Teen Titans at the same time. And I remember they did this episode of the New Teen Titans where they went up against the recombinants or the recombatants. I was like, hey, these recombatant guys have the same origin and all the same powers as the individual D and Agents. That's not right. And then as I got older, I found out that was absolutely intentional because there was going to be a crossover. Couldn't happen for, lawyer reasons. Damn lawyers keep getting involved in stuff and stopping us from having good comics. So Marvin George just said, well, we're going to do this. And, Mark and Will said, yeah. And while you're doing that, and they had a Teen Titans team over in D and Agents that was totally renamed and having a different adventure there. So the D and Agents and the Teen Titans had two crossovers completely unofficial happening at the same time because they couldn't do the original thing.
They had a lot of similar plot lines too, like who killed was a plot line. Different characters on both in the Teen Titans and a different character in the DNA. Just so who knows? Maybe that was supposed to be part of the story too, because they both had very similar storylines going too.
It could have been. That would have been a big boost for DNA Agents, though, because while they were popular, they were still an indie book, and you could team up. At the time, New Teen Titans had done that thing with the X-Men, where Marvel and DC said, "Okay, take our most popular titles and slam them together," and they did that. Marv Wolfman, Walt Simonson book that was. I've still got it. I love that book. It was very cool to see that kind of a crossover happen. But for DNA Agents to get that kind of a high profile thing, that would have been a big. They might still be being published today. Who knows?
Could be. It'd be a property people wouldn't allow to let lapse there. So yeah. But sometimes I've got this thing I always call the expiration of expectation.
I've stolen that, and I've been able to use it in a lot of podcasts lately.
Oh, have you? Yeah, because it's like you can't go over a year. You can't drag something out. It's like with the Red Hulk, people were dying to know who the Red Hulk was. When they finally revealed it 3 years later, nobody cared. It's not a big deal. It's not a valuable book at all. It's just like, it took too long to get there. And so you let a property lie. The year is the expiration. You can't drag it out over a year. It's too much.
Yeah. And, that's if you drag it out over a year, now you have to have it forever be the mystery. It's like with Wolverine. The first year of Wolverine, he's got amnesia. He doesn't really know his origin. He's got adamantium claws and stuff. He's got a berserker rage. There was no need to have Wolverine origin ever done, because by that point it's like, no, you'll just ruin it now. It's
That's
the
part of who
mystery
he
is the character. Yeah, we'll never know. What's the
Now we
Joker's
know.
real name? We never know. It's not Jack Napier. I don't care what anybody says.
Used to, there was in the Marvel comics, there was Dead and Bucky Dead. Now Bucky got better, so now there's no longer that anymore.
Yeah.
Now Dead's kind of like a cold, but not a real bad cold.
Yeah. I was dead. I got better. Is there still Uncle Ben dead?
They brought him back a couple times in different ways, but yeah, he's still kind of dead. Yeah, give him time.
Kind of dead.
I remember
okay.
Gwen Stacy was dead for a long time. Then they brought her back to life and character assassinator. I mean, it's like,
she and then it wasn't like
by the Green Goblin. Oh man.
What? And then wasn't it like a clone that was like a false story? We thought it was all real at the time, and then we found out it was like a clone of Gwen Stacy.
The clone was in the regular Marvel universe. The one I'm talking about was in the Ultimate universe, and they brought her back. Actually, I'm confusing that too, because I think they killed her. They also killed her in the Ultimate universe. Then they did bring her back in the main Marvel universe, and I don't remember if it was a clone or not. I didn't care. Once she was,
it got convoluted.
Here you have a plot line where a girl who wasn't even sleeping with her boyfriend was sleeping with the dad of one of her friends, because he just seemed so powerful. And then she, when she went off to Europe, I guess 1 year in the regular comics, that was to go have the babies by the Green Goblin. And Gwen Stacy was always such a sweet character, and this and that. But I lost her.
Now she's.
I haven't read a Spider-Man comic since.
Now she's Spider-Gwen from another universe with a totally different origin. So guess what? She's not Gwen Stacy anymore. We don't have to pay you royalties on that character either. Or is she? I don't even think she's Spider-Gwen. She's supposed to be Ghost Spider, but I don't think the name is taking, because you've been calling her Spider-Gwen for so long that it's stuck.
She was really popular when she came out as Spider-Gwen, but it
was a cute little outfit with the hoodie and the pink spider webs and everything like that. It was,
that's something they lose track of too. It's okay to have fun in comics. Nowadays, everything is grim, gritty, and you can laugh. You go back and look at those 40 comics, you saw Batman and Superman smiling on the cover. A smiling Batman showing his teeth. You don't see that. You see his teeth, he's gritting like he's about to kick some tail.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. They were having fun. In fact, speaking of fun comics, I shouldn't have put this in my drawer today. I shouldn't have done it, but I did it. Now I got to dig it out. Fortunately, it's right on top. So you remember Carl Kiesel? Who did
Kiesel or Kessel?
It's Kiesel. I've actually heard him say his last name on this show, so that's how I know. I always ask people to pronounce their names because I've been pronouncing it Kessel for years, and once he said it, I'm like, I'm correcting that.
There's some names you just never know.
No, you don't. but he did Superboy. He created King Shark. All his characters have been a lot of fun. Well, he's still around, and he just got this off Kickstarter. I'm going to take it out of the bag so it's not quite so glared upon. I just got this, and I've been enjoying the heck out of it. In fact, I was loath to put it in the drawer because it's like, well, now it's not out anymore and a new book. It's in my thing. This is Impossible Jones, and it's Impossible Team Up number A because there's going to be 4 of them, and in it he's got Impossible Jones she's a thief who got superpowers a la Plastic Man. They're the same power set, but she's still a thief. But everyone thinks she's a hero because she, accidentally, whatever it is, that's the perception of her, that she's a hero. So she tries to live up to that and constantly in fear that, people are going to figure this out pretty soon because I am a thief. I'm stealing stuff. And then her best friend is Holly Days, who used to be a hero. And then, fell from grace and became the sidekick of a psychopathic killer called Krampus. And she's just a girl with gimmicks that are all Christmas themed. So they're best friends, and there's a murder mystery going on here. And the hero, it gets called in, but she's not the hero. And the murderer suspect is actually Holly. So it's like, okay, this is my best friend. I'm being asked to bring her in. How am I going to get out of this? And and not screw this deal I've got going here. Tons of fun. The artwork inside is like it's a lot like the Bruce Timm stuff, but it's a little bit on the more realism side, just enough to be to look a little realistic, but still enough to where it looks like Bruce Timm animation stuff. Fun comic all the way through. And not funny all the way through. I mean, somebody dies in this thing, and you feel for the person, and you feel Impossible Jones empathy for her because it was a cosplay club, and there was somebody there dressed as Impossible Jones, and they became kind of sort of friends at the party, and then she's the one who gets killed, strangled with Christmas lights. So, which is why all the eyes are on Holly Days. So it's a fun book, but still an adventure book. And guess what? The story was told in one issue.
Self-contained,
still enough, new characters added in there. You're like, okay, well, where's this going to go from here? But you know what? Next, where it goes from here will be an entirely new adventure with the ongoing tension of, will I ever get caught? So it's still possible to make good and fun comics.
Yeah,
coming from the big two.
See, so many times comics are just getting to be where it's just a one-trick pony, just one beat all over and over again. Violence, and let's shake it up with some more violence. Let's get even grimmer. One good example I used about good storytelling, because you need to have all the elements in there, is Disney King's The Lion King. It wasn't all singing elephants and dancing hippos, but at the same time, it wasn't all the death of Simba. And comics nowadays, oh, well, now they backed a car over him. He's still twitching. Now they put a bomb on him. He's still twitching. Now they took a crowbar to him. That's the whole movie. You're numb to it. People get body parts blown off. It doesn't mean anything because that's all you're being exposed to. Or when you have high valleys, that makes the lows lower, and low valleys make the mountains higher, and the mountains make the valleys lower. And that's just good storytelling, highs and lows, and you take the reader on a ride up and down, get them emotional content that way.
And now they just eat dinner. It's like the only tension would be like Wolverine had indigestion afterwards. It's
the burp.
I don't know. It's about. I haven't read a big two comic in months.
They just don't connect with me anymore either. Yeah.
And I don't miss it. I have not missed it at all. I'm reading these these crowdfunded books that come through, and when you don't have, I don't know if it's like years of continuity. I don't think so, because there were years of continuity when I got into it in the 80s, the 70s and 80s, that I didn't have to know, because it was all compressed storytelling, not decompressed over a year and a half. That you have to, you can't read this book unless you've read the last year and a half of this plus the crossover. To know where everything's at.
You can tell a good story and have it be self-contained and still be part of a bigger overarching story. And when you and I were reading comics when we were younger, they did a good job of that, and the reason we kept reading because we wanted to know what happens next. It was kind of like soap operas. It got us invested in the characters, and we wanted to know what happens to them. It's like one of the great quotes that Stan Lee always made was like, we don't own the comics, the fans own the comics. And they have forgotten that. So, you get guys, editors in there like, oh, no, I'll do whatever I want to. And I'm just going to shake it up and shock you. And, and all they do is just make the readers go away because, like, I can't relate to that. Gwen Stacy having babies by the Green Goblin. You got to be kidding me. I remember this was during the Michael J. Straczynski run, which, I like Straczynski's stuff. He's a good writer. I loved his Babylon 5. But I did not care for that line of the story. And when he first took over the book, they were floating an idea that they said, later it was a joke. But the word got out that they were going to recreate Spider-Man and change his origin to where he was sexually abused by Uncle Ben. And every retailer in America is like, what the? No way! You can't do that. You can't do that with Spider-Man. All of a sudden, it'd be like, hey, he got killed by a murderer. Hey, good. He got what he deserved. It would just it would have destroyed the content of who Spider-Man was. And so, they backed away from that story. Said, oh, no, that was a joke. When that got leaked, we were just kidding. It's like, yeah, you realize that was a bad idea. Maybe you tested the market a little bit and realized, let's step back, and then start running.
Well, they don't touch on it anymore, but there was that story where Peter Parker was sexually abused as a kid.
They finally did do it. I didn't catch that one.
Well, it was years before the Straczynski run. But it was one of those government issued PSA comics. I remember it was Spider-Man and Power Pack. It was that team up, and it was to teach kids to tell if this happens, tell. And Peter's story was he was the younger high school. I think probably grade school kid, but there was an older kid, legal age older, who was like mentoring him because he's like, oh yeah, you're a nerd like me. Yeah, I like science too. And here, I'll show you stuff. Hey, look, I've got a microscope. I've got a chemistry set. You want to come over to my place? And and it got to a point where the guy was coming on to Peter and forcing himself on him. Peter was relating this story to somebody else who'd gone through it and says, this is what happened to me. And when it did, I told somebody, and it got taken care of. And they showed the guy being arrested. So he's got that in his past, if that's considered Marvel canon, which
I remember the book. I never read it. So yeah, that's wild. I didn't know that was in
I was reading everything Power Pack at the time too. So it was
they had a cult following.
Yeah, it was a fun story. And now of course they've grown up. Franklin Richards isn't grown up yet, but Katie Powers is an adult and a lesbian. Because aren't they all?
Yeah, no. It's just there's a certain segment of society, but I don't think it's the biggest segment as what they portray. Sometimes when you're getting on the television and books, it's like, oh, that's what everybody is. Like, no, I mean, what about the rest of us? What about entertainment for the rest of us who, if you want to do that, fine. I don't care. What people make their choices. I'm fine with that. I will enable them to make their own choices, and they're allowed to. But I'm also allowed to make choices too. That doesn't include that. And I don't want that in my face all the time either. So it's one of those things. Pendulums tend to swing to extremes, and if you're not careful, the next swing is going to be back to another extreme. And you need to find a good medium ground where everybody, all inclusive means stuff for everybody, and everybody has different ideas of what they find enjoyable to be exposed to.
Well, that speaks that issue specifically, that PSA government issued. I forget if it was Health and Human Services or what it was that sponsored the thing. It speaks to how popular comics were in the 80s when that happened, because when they wanted to get that message out, they went to Marvel Comics and said, "Can you do this?" The Drug Enforcement Agency went to DC Comics and said, "Hey, we need Say No to Drugs comic. Can you guys do that?" And there were two PSA comic books featuring the Teen Titans with I can't remember. There was some guy in a purple Union suit and a red cape, and he was like Crusader, and his job was that he fought drug pushers on the streets. And we never saw him again because he was just a PSA guy until Tom King brought him into Heroes in Crisis and made him a junkie. I was like, Tom just cannot not touch somebody and destroy them.
Well, do you remember when they were doing military appreciation comics? Now you
No.
probably, because unless you're around a military base, like I'm close to the Air Force base out here, where all the C-130s are based. That's where the fleet comes from. Matter of fact, I used to, whenever Bill Clinton, when he was president, when he'd come back to Little Rock, he would go out to the base, and I'd be out in my pool, and all of a sudden I'd have this presidential airplane swooping over my pool about 100 feet above it, and oh man, it might make you deaf, because that was
Yep.
not their normal flight path, and because he would sneak in town.
Sure.
And usually when the planes go over, they'd be way up in the sky. But when it was Bill, he was just knocking off the tiles off my roof. And so they were always giving me these comics that they were being given, and it was going pretty good. And then the last one they did, I don't know if they've done any more after this one. It was written by Michael Bendis, and it was an old rehash of a plot line that's been used in Doctor Who, a whole lot of things, where basically a Kree ship had crashed so long ago on Earth. Rocks had built around it, millions of years had passed. And then when all of a sudden they get broken out of the rocks, we'll immediately start fighting with our military and this and that. And then the Avengers show up to, stop the fighting. And it's like, look, you guys in the military, if you just stop and think before you shoot. And that was the message. And I'm like, you're giving the military the message that, you're just a bunch of gun happy guys and you just shoot before you think. And, I don't know that anybody ever made another one after that. And I don't know if anybody really even wanted them.
Well,
they got to remember what the
Bendis.
message is. And they've totally, I used to have so many customers in the military. I used to have officers from every police force in the area, detectives, everything. And that audience went away. Not long, really, they were going away about that time because it's like one of my customers who was big into DC said, he won't ever buy another DC because according to them, he's a child killer. And, so the message of, and the anti-military message that started coming in, you're talking about the editors now in Marvel DC, they just chased a huge segment of their customer base away by saying, we don't like you. We think there's something wrong with you. And, these are the guys protecting them, putting their lives on the line to protect our country, where we should be saluting the guys. I mean, it's just, it's really a big mistake. The industry's been making a lot of mistakes, and, they've just been narrowing down their focus to a really tiny clientele. And, so when people like you and I, we quit reading them because we can't relate to the books anymore. I mean, they're not telling us stories we enjoy reading.
And, military appreciation, that military as a genre, I'm not seeing even in crowdfunding. And crowdfunding's having a big explosion with like Westerns. They're doing romance books now. They're having all the genres that we had
Science
in
fiction.
the 70s. Yeah, exactly. And they're having great success with it. I would love to see something done in military, so that something that the military would get behind again and say, hey, here's a book we can start reading now. These guys get it. They aren't telling us that we're baby killers and that we're trigger happy and that we don't know, anything but shoot.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't tell you how many customers of mine who'd they'd be over in Europe and be getting all their comics at the PX, and they'd ship them back here to America. And, there's no weight limit sometimes of how much they could ship back. And, they were big readers of comics. They have a lot of downtime and they want entertainment. They get passed around all America. So that was a huge group of people that all of a sudden would become comic collectors because they're exposed to a collector and everybody read his books. And he's like, guys, quit. I want to keep this in good shape. And, and now they've lost that audience. It's just an audience that just, we don't like you. You don't represent what we want. And that's what the editors seem to be saying. And the guys are like, fine, I'm done. Because what was the mantra of Spider-Man? When all the police officers were buying it, the mantra was, and they would repeat this all the time, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
And,
of course, all the police were shooting at Spider-Man all the time.
Great responsibility. They were, living up to it. And then it's this guy like, dysfunctional slackers. That's where it's at,
Yeah.
They couldn't relate to it.
Yeah. Of course, the thing with Spider-Man was the police were always shooting at him too. But that was because, he was portrayed as a menace.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it just, but he was always working with the police. He was always helping them, webbing up the villains for them and this and that. It's just, there used to be a lot more appreciation for our police, for our military. I mean, you're seeing that we're, now you don't even see the national anthem played at the start of football games for the most part because they're like, okay, people want to protest during it. And, this is one group of people's moment of acknowledgement. Yeah, maybe there's some issues and people want to protest those issues. But when it's, it's kind of like, remember Taylor Swift. I remember the first time she won an award. And then another guy gets up there, I think Kanye West, is like, no, she doesn't deserve this award. I think they should have gone to somebody else. Well, he did it. He rained on her parade at her moment. And, that was considered wrong. So, okay, when it's the moment where we celebrate the military and the police, that's their moment. Let's not rain on it. Give them their moment. If you want to protest something, do it when you're not raining on somebody else's parade. I mean, that's literally the definition of raining on someone's parade.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, they don't play it, so they don't have an opportunity to protest. But now they just don't play it.
And so now those guys don't get their moment of honor.
Yeah. I'm gonna tweet Billy Tucci after this and say, hey, you're because Billy Tucci is a huge supporter of the veterans and the military. Donates a lot of money to them and stuff. Float the idea past him to have a military.
I think he did a book release. She was his big thing, and then he did another book. I can't remember what it's called, but he actually did the actual official release on the deck of a battleship.
That I believe, yeah, I kind of remember that. So, and he's doing one right now. He's working with Dynamite on Miss Fury, Joy Division, which is a hardcover graphic novel, and it's set during World War II, and I know that there's a lot of airplane nose cone art style stuff being done with that. That June Tarpe, that is totally different topic, but it's the first female superhero predating Wonder Woman, and done by a female writer / artist, because June Tarpe Mills was creating all of that. And not only that, but she was drawing her in poses that I was like, there's one that's like, the dress is off and there's most of the breast being shown. I'm like, yeah, she couldn't have got away with that back in the day. And Billy's like, that's her drawing. that's original stuff you're looking at there, sir.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, well, I guess she did. But
I like Billy's work. He does a good job.
Yeah, he does. June ahead of her time there. But yeah, I'd love to. I remember Sergeant Rock, Unknown Soldier, Haunted Tank, GI Combat, and this, even the science fiction stuff. Weird war tales that they had. They don't do any of that anymore. And if they do, they tried to do a Weird War Tales, and it was all this sucks. I don't want to be here. This is wrong. We're making the wrong decisions. This is not our fight.
Yeah, I have to admit, I never did read a lot of war comics when I was a kid. My brother was in the Marines, and when the what was that offensive? The Tet Offensive, when it started, he was right in the middle of all the fighting. They had this air base that they built right in the middle of all these hills, and the Viet Cong just sat there, just kind of watched them twiddle their thumbs. And once it opened, then they all started attacking. And the Marines just held on to like, no, we built this base, we're not going to give it up. And he was there most of that time, and the planes, they couldn't even land. They just slow down, drop off, or grab stuff, and just immediately take right back off, because they knew to get bombed if they were in one spot very long. And
yeah.
I mean, so as I was growing up, my parents had a map of Vietnam on the kitchen wall, and like, okay, where did we talk about on the news? The heaviest fighting was up. Yep, that's where Tom is. So yeah, I grew up with that. So it was a pretty real thing. But I had respect for the military. That he believed in what he was doing. He was trying to help the people over there, because he saw a population that did not want to be taken over by North Vietnam, and so he actually went back for a second tour, and so it was a real thing to me. There was nothing romantic about it. It was just too real. Although I will say there was one war comic that I did like, and that was Total War Mars Patrol, because it had the science fiction side.
Oh yeah.
Well,
the Weird War Tales had like the GI robot, and he was he was a robot, and he was in green fatigues, and it was World War II. So he was just like people trying to figure him out, and he never talked.
And then there was that Island of Dinosaurs, where you had the military guys always fighting in World War II.
Yeah, the war that time forgot.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, that was that. So many good titles. They've got all these properties, and they're not doing anything with them. And now that AT&T doesn't own DC Comics anymore, they sold them off to Discovery, and Discovery is a European company, and they kind of want to make money. There's so many stories that haven't been told. It's kind of like a lot of stories are still coming about World War II. And, that'd be great stuff to tell, but it just doesn't have a market. I remember my brother telling some stories, and some of them were pretty bad that I wouldn't want to repeat. But some other ones were kind of funny. It's kind of like the time he shot Superman. Now, you're like, Superman, what? There was this one guy, they were shooting him, and he'd go down, he'd get back up. And I don't know how many times he shot him, but he kept going, running away.
They're like, how does this guy keep getting back up? They were shooting with an M16. And when they found his, what they would do is they'd make like tongs, what do we call sandals with just like the one thing right between the big toe and the next toe. And I mean, he said that shoe was so big, they would cut them out of the bottom of treads of tires that couldn't be used anymore. And they said it was like a size 15 shoes. Like, man, we didn't know that Superman was, working with the Viet Cong. And, so because the guy they couldn't take him down. And then they saw his shoes, like, God, this guy was a giant, because everybody always thought they were these little guys. Another story told me that was kind of funny. Him and some other guys, they were, guarding a bridge. A big old pile of junk comes down the river, gets stuck underneath the bridge. So all these guys they're shooting it and this and that, trying to break it up to get it to go. And finally, they said, "I'll call it a demolition squad. We're gonna have to blow this thing up because we can't break it up no matter how much we shoot it." And the guys, when they come back out of the water, they're white as a sheet. They're like, "Guys, there was a giant bomb on the bottom of this thing." And so obviously, what the Viet Cong intended to do was to blow up the bridge. And so somebody back then they had to bring all this down the Ho Chi Minh Trail. All that stuff had to be carried from the north. So somebody or some bodies had to carry that thing on their backs, who knows how many miles, attach it, make this huge mass that wouldn't get broken up, put the bomb on it, and the only thing they can figure is the guy who was holding the wire to attack the detonator, it floats away.
Oh, so it didn't have a
But here
detonator.
they're shooting this thing, trying to break it up. I had no idea that they might have gotten a big explosion. Yeah, but I still imagine that one guy who's holding the wire.
It's gone.
They kicked him all the way back up the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
Can we get another one?
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we wrap up here, Mike, tell us what is selling these past 2 weeks.
Well, DC's doing pretty good. What I like about DC, you have ongoing series. It's stable audiences, stable readers, and they hold the readers. So I like seeing the DC stuff comes in because it has good numbers. Marvel, they keep relaunching and restarting, and every time you got to rebuild up the audience. A lot of people say, okay, what they consider a jumping on point is a jumping off point for me. I'm gone. And I've just been watching Marvel just destroy themselves. It's like they're being self-destructive. What's interesting is the Penguin Random House is about to start up. So in another few weeks, I'll start getting my Marvels from them. So I'll be interested to see how that happens because I've had like 7 out of the last 9 shipments from Diamond be delayed, either from their fault or they blame UPS a lot. And, that's just too disruptive. And, so I'm, now it's just going to be independence won't be nearly as disruptive. And, you got to have, as a retailer, you got to have your books on time. And, the response of stuff happens is not a good response. You've got to fix problems. It's like I used to be the purchaser for International Graphics. And I'd write $1 million purchase orders all the time. And I'd have multiple paper distributors that I could buy from. And what I always told the guys is, look, I realize problems will happen. That doesn't worry me. What I want to know is how are you going to handle it? If you're going to deal with it and take care of the problem right away, I'll keep on doing business with you, and that's no problem. And just it's gotten so long that you got a problem. Okay, it's going to be steady diet from now on.
Now, we talked about this before we went live on the show that you are going to be using the Penguin Random House distribution. How did the numbers run out on that versus, with the Diamond's shipping cost versus free shipping and Diamond's discount versus Penguin's discount?
I'll probably be making a better profit margin with Random Penguin House. They're a little bit less of a discount, but it's free shipping. And the shipping has just gotten so high for quality that is so poor with UPS. So I'll actually have a better profit margin going over there. Now you can still keep getting them from Diamond with those high shipping rates and a much reduced discount rate. I mean, I would have lost 15 points plus be paying like 10%. I mean, it's like a difference of 20-25% of go with Penguin or give up 20-25% of discount point. Let's see, which am I going to do? Well, I went with Penguin.
So you're making more money on the markup now with the Penguin books.
I actually probably will be better off. Yeah.
Now, I just heard earlier this week that IDW is also going that direction.
Now, IDW is not that big a effect on the bottom line in a lot of books. So, I'll probably switch over to, because you get, with that shipping, it just eats you alive. It really does. I mean, you just get killed with shipping.
Yeah. Well, especially if it's not packed well. And Diamond's notorious for here's a big box with a bunch of paper and a book in it. Here's your $4.99 book that you paid what $2.50 for maybe.
Yeah, these books I've been having showed up a day after release date. I've been sending them pictures.
Yeah.
Look how beat up these things are. I mean, it looks like he used it for a basketball and rolled it down some stairs.
Yeah, here's your here's the book you paid $2.54 and $10 shipping. Sell it for $5 now.
Yeah, one thing I've learned too is if it comes damaged from diamond, don't try to get a replacement because that's going to come out of Sparta, and usually the replacements were even more damaged than the ones you reported. So I've just gotten like, just give me credit. My customer's going to buy it somewhere else. He knows I can't get him a good copy.
Yeah. All right.
That's
well,
pretty
Mike. Yeah, I don't know. When I saw IDW switching over, I know they're not that big, but I think they're the next biggest that Diamond had.
Now, one thing I will say about Diamond, because I want to be fair, I don't want to feel like I'm just bashing on them. There for a long time when there was competition, Diamond was head and shoulders better than anybody else. And if you picked anybody to beat the monopolized distributor, those would have been the guys I would have picked. But it was just a slow decay, and a lot of it really started happening after Steve Jeppe retired. I mean, he started having some health problems, started having vertigo, and put other people in charge. And you see this happening in almost every industry, every kind of business, that when the ownership, with the vested ownership, quits being active in the day-to-day, the other people, okay, we got all the control. I saw this happen. I used to work management for the printing company I was talking about, International Graphics. It was run by a gentleman by the name of Raymond Rebsman. There are streets named after him. There are parks named after him here in Little Rock. And he had the largest printing conglomerate in the state. It was International Graphics. And that's when I went to work for. And I was being groomed for upper management. And, there was a conveyor belt of people all set. But then Raymond died all of a sudden. Then the guy he'd picked to succeed him died. And it's like the top 4 guys that all been lined up, they all went at the same time within just a few months of each other. So now all of a sudden you've got a personnel manager running a corporation, and you got an accountant running a division, and you didn't have the guys with the leadership skills, for those particular jobs, and they didn't have the vision down the road, and you just watched the whole company start to get cannibalized. Just anything to maintain the profits of the family he wanted. Well, I was a young man. I was like, I just don't see a future here. I mean, these guys, they can't keep doing this forever. It's going to collapse. So I went off and started my own business, and they were gone within a few years after that. First everybody thought, are you crazy? You're going to go do what? Sell comic books? You're lying for like a vice presidency. What are you thinking about quitting? I was like 27 at the time. And, cause I was making some changes and doing some things that helped make the company more profitable. But they were pulling out the violin like, oh, well, we really can't afford to pay you what you're worth. Like, all right, fine, I'm gone. And you're going to do what? Sell comics. But they were gone not long after that. And, here you had the company that was dominant in an industry. At that time back in the late 70s and early 80s, printing was the number one job in America for a number of jobs around. This is before all the digital stuff came along and copy machines and this and that. And they were dominant in that industry, and they just lost it all. And so that's kind of what happened to Steve. You had other people in charge. They didn't have the same vision that he had, and he had some really good people. They were the only ones carrying all the water. He had all these other people who weren't doing as good a job, and they left. And when he lost the good people, it just, so he's back. He's trying to, get the ship righted. It may be a little too late. I mean, the Titanic may have taken too many iceberg strikes. I hope not. I'm pulling for Steve. I'll keep on doing business with him as long as he's around.
When the company's being run by, a new generation of people who don't love what the company does, it goes down. I've been saying the same thing about, mainstream comic publishing.
I was just about to say the same thing. Reminds you of the editors at Marvel DC now, doesn't it?
Yeah. These are not, there's no Denny O'Neil or Roy Thomas at the place. There's nobody there that, lives, eats, and breathes and loves these characters and these stories. They're just like, what are we gonna do this week? How can we get sales up? We gotta get people interested in Captain Marvel again. Let's do another Captain Marvel #1. Movies are coming out. Marvel apparently says, how can we not have any comics about the movies that's going to be out right now?
I know, isn't that crazy?
Yeah. How are your Shang-Chi sales this month? Doctor Strange is going to be dead around the time the next Doctor Strange movie comes out. I know. A long time ago, back to, of course, I still had my 2 retail stores, and I remember I had a customer come in and he goes, hey, I've been watching all these Marvel movies. I want to get some Marvel comics. I want to get Wolverine. Well, at that time, Wolverine was X-23. And he said, well, what do you mean Wolverine's a little girl? All right, well, give me the Hulk. Well, at that time, it was the She-Hulk and the Amadeus Cho-Hulk. And he's like, what? Okay, well, then, give me every character he wanted was either a girl or was gay.
And he's like, "You got
Or a
to be
Nazi.
looking. There's a camera hidden here somewhere. You cannot tell me that they're not making a single one of the characters in the movies I'm watching. Yeah, I can't buy those in a comic book." And he couldn't. None of the characters that were in the movies were that character in the comic books at the time. And he left
You got
without
to buy
making
the back issues.
Yeah. Yeah, but when it's a new guy coming in, he wants to buy the latest thing. And when the latest thing isn't what he wants, he's like, "Got to go buy. See you." I mean, he thought I was punking him. He's like, "You got a hidden camera here somewhere. There could be no way that they don't make these characters in the movies that they're having out at the theaters." And they weren't. Every one of them, it was a different version. And, I mean, it's okay to try different stuff and this and that. But at some point, you got to concentrate on your core audience and satisfy them.
Yeah, which they've
They
given
don't
up
do.
the core audience. They
Yeah.
think they have another audience. They're curtailing their they're focusing their efforts on a focus group that says we want this, but what they don't realize is that these people don't buy comic books. They will
That's all the people-
applaud you. Says yes, thank you. There's a character I like that character. Buy it? No, hell no. I'm not going to buy a comic.
Yeah, it reminds
Not
me of
my
one time I had somebody come in my store and said, "Oh man, I love that cardboard stand of that character. Will you order it for me?" I'm like, "Oh, hey, I've got one for sale." And they're like, never mind.
Yeah. You don't want to. It's actually here. That's like a
one for
cat.
sale. No, I was serious. I wanted you to do something, but I'm not going to actually buy it.
Yeah, I wanted you to have another one so that I could come in and look at it more.
Yeah.
All
Kind
right.
of like that movie with True Lies when Arnold's driving the guy's Corvette and he's like, "Hold it for me and I'll think about it."
Yeah. Well, you've probably had a lot of people that do that with comics and hold
Oh,
bins
yeah.
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I've had a huge hold bin before. I know what that's like. I had a income that was being bounced checks too. So the guy who was paying me to review comics was like, suddenly I couldn't get those books that I was supposed to be getting. And I
Yeah, but you
pre-ordered
were
them.
good about communicating too. It's like it's the people who ghost on you. I actually had a guy call me up one time and said, "I haven't been in for 2 years. I just want to come in and buy the ones that went up in value, though." We're like, "Dude, I gave up on you a long time ago."
Yeah.
I got angry. Expect me to still be holding those books.
Yeah, I want to come. I want to come get the ones that are $50 now, but I'm going to still pay cover price for.
Mm-hmm. But I'm gonna leave all the other ones with you. Like, nah, you can't do that. Yeah, people would run cons all the time. One of the cons was always people, "Hey, I left some comics book for you to look at a year ago, so I want to come get them now." I was like, I don't let people leave comic books with me. I don't have any books for you. Like, "Oh yeah, that Fantastic Four #1, that was one of mine." Yeah, no, nobody's gonna pull that game on me. And people all the time like, "Can I leave these for you to look at?" No, I only look at it with you standing right there. Otherwise, I don't want to touch them. Don't.
Well, I do the same thing with the shipping. As soon as the box arrives here, I don't open it. I get the owner on StreamYard, and we're not broadcasting, but we have private streamer. Like, okay, here's my box cutter. Here we go. This is okay. Everything looks good, because I don't want them to get hit by a truck and then it be on me because they arrive damaged. It's going to be on the shipper. We're just it's good business. It's good safe practice. Anyway, Mike, it's been a good discussion.
Always good to talk to you.
We wish the other folks would have shown up. I'll just have to work harder at getting a guest next time. I dropped the ball this week. I was just like, I slept a lot.
There's always something to talk about there, and the industry. I mean, they just leave it up to us. We can get all straightened out in a week.
We could, and then we'd have nothing to talk about. But we'd sure have a bunch of good comics to enjoy.
Yeah, that's what we'd be talking about. All the good books coming out. Hey, we're bringing back all the stuff people want to read.
Exactly. All right. Well, Michael, I'm going to let you go. What's that?
I said, bring the fun back in comics.
Yes, that we need a company out there who's going to make that their goal. So, with that, I'm going to let you go. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Everybody in the chat, glad you were here. Don't have a show without you, and we just hope that while you were here, you had a blast. So,